Hey guys, so today I want to talk to you about how to create a bottle of lemonade in Adobe Illustrator. So to start, we're going to work on the labeling for the bottle. With that, we're going to go to File, New. Now for this, as long as it's print-based, we really have no issue with what size you use, but for memory's sake and just waste of paper, I would start with a basic 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. If you don't have this screen, just go ahead and type your width and your height as 8.5 by 11 and making sure your color mode is at CMYK. I always suggest naming your file, so I'm going to go ahead and put bottle label and choose create. Now that we actually have the document laid out, let's go ahead and add our guides and our rulers. So to start that, hit Command or Control R. You can also find this under View by choosing Rulers. We're going to go ahead and create guides by clicking one of the edges of the rulers and pulling over. So I'm going to go ahead and create my vertical guide as well as a horizontal guide. Now that I have my guides laid out, I want to start by making the basic form of the lemon slice by grabbing an ellipse. Now you can go ahead and set up your color if you want. So I'm going to have no stroke, and I'm going to create a new color. So to do this, I clicked on the new swatch icon in my fill, and I want to have 13% magenta and I want 100% yellow. I want to make sure I have no cyan or black in my coloring. Make sure you choose OK. Now that we've added this as a swatch, we can select the color as our fill as for when we draw. Now that we have our color set up and our ellipse selected, make sure you start in the center of your both guide crosshairs and holding down Shift for proportion and Alt for center out. Click and pull out to create your lemon slice for however big you would like to make it. Once you have this made, we want to copy and paste this. So you're going to hit Command or Control C, and then we want to make sure it's in the exact same location. So we're going to hit Control or Command F, and that's going to paste in front. Now that we have that done, using your selection tool, grab a corner and holding down Shift and Alt, drag into whatever size you want your outer peel to be. Filling this with a white or a cream color, whatever you would like, we have our basic form of our outer slice. Now we need to think of the pieces inside the lemon slice. Now I broke my lemon slice into 8 little wedges. So with that, we have 360 degrees in a circle, and if we divide it into 8, that's 45 degrees each. So I can select a guide, and if you're unable to select, make sure you go to View, and we go down to Guides, and we make sure we have it unlocked. Now that you can select a guide, and you can tell because the color will change to that bright blue, we can rotate a guide by selecting our rotation tool on our toolbar. Click in the center of the 2 crosshairs of the guides, and then rotate 45 degrees. You can see the number appearing right next to it, but you can also hold down Shift and choose 45 degrees. So we have our negative 45 there. Now we can add a new guide directly in the middle again, and we have 2 45-degree slices perfectly all set up. Now we can start by creating one of the wedges. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to make sure all my guides line up. Beautiful. Zoom back out. Using my pen tool, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my yellow color that I created. I'm going to draw. Now I want to hug this side of it, but I want to leave a little space on my left so I'm consistent all the way around. So I'm going to kind of click and pull here to start my rounded corner here. I'm going to go down here and click and pull for my wedge. Then I'm going to go over here, just slightly in, and click and pull as straight as possible with my line. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom here and click and pull. All right, now that I have my lemon wedge kind of created, I can choose to manipulate my forms. If you would like to change some sizing or move some points around to make everything look a little bit more consistent, this is the time to do it. Once you're happy with your little piece, go ahead and make sure you're selecting with the black arrow, which is your selection tool, and grabbing your rotation tool on your toolbar, click the center of all your guides, making that crosshair right in the middle of your entire lemon wedge. Once you have that crosshair clicked and created, if you hold down Alt and with inside, I'm going to click and pull up. By holding down Alt, you're adding the piece to the next little section by duplicating it. So Alt's duplicating and you are rotating. Once you've done that step one time, you can hit Command or Control D and it duplicates that step in a repetitious manner all the way around, creating a consistent little lemon slice. Now you have your basic form made. Next, it's time for type. Go ahead and grab your type tool and click a little bit below. I'm going to go ahead and type out lemonade. Using my selection tool, I'm going to hold down Shift and click and drag up. Once I'm kind of happy with my size, I'm going to use my arrow key to kind of move my location around. And I'm going to choose my font. Now I choose Optima because I liked the way the little curves were at the bottom and top of the letter forms to kind of simulate the curves in the little wedges or little slices of lemon. So now that I have this created, you can even adjust your kerning a little bit. If you're not very comfortable with it, just choose optical and it kind of will help it out a little bit. And then we can shift that to make it nice and centered. Next, let's go ahead and add the color. Now if you want to do the yellow, and this is the exact same yellow as this, but as you can see it, because of the letter forms and type is so small, next to a filled form, it tends to look a little bit lighter in color. So a trick when you have text right next to it is to slightly darken the color. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and just double click on my color here, but I'm going to add 5% of black to my color for the text. And now it will look like it is actually the same color, even though it's just a hair darker. If you don't want to stick with a thin little font like this, you can also choose to do bolded and make it more dominant form. Once you're happy with your style of the font and your wording, and then you also have your lemon slice created, we want to go ahead and hide our guides here. I'm going to select the font and I'm going to convert it to outlines. Then I'm going to select everything and I'm going to make this a symbol. And this is for the mapping phase. When we get to the 3D part of the bottle, it's ready to go. So if you don't have this symbol here, which is your little symbols panel, you can also find this going under Windows and choosing symbols here, and it'll open the exact same panel. Next, we want to create a symbol. So you're going to select this icon here, which is new symbol, and it's going to come up with this little options area here. We just want to head and name our label or symbol to be the lemonade label. You can put it however you want, doesn't matter. And you can choose Either one, just as a habit, I tend to do graphic, but you can do either export type. It actually doesn't affect anything that's happening within Illustrator itself. Leave their symbol type as dynamic and go ahead and choose OK. As you can see, it's added it here into our symbols panel, and we're ready for the next phase. Now let's take a look at creating the bottle. So going back to our document we're in, that we made our symbol or label, I'm going to create another artboard to start working on my bottle. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my artboard tool on the toolbar, and I'm going to go ahead and in my left hand side I'm just going to click and drag, and it really doesn't matter if you're really abrupt with it. You could even just do something like this, and you can just type in the size you need at the top here, 8.5 by 11, and you can move it around however you want. Once you're happy with it, just go ahead and select the selection tool with a check mark up top, and you're done, ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure you have a second layer created. If you don't already have one, so just go ahead and check the new layer icon and make a second layer. And that's so we can actually lock our label or move things around quicker if we need to in the future. So I'm going to start by making just a simple bottle form, and I'm going to do that by grabbing my rectangle tool, and I'm going to just have an outline mode. I don't need, or stroke, you don't need a fill for this. And we only need to draw half the bottle, so just grabbing my guide here, just going to see roughly, show my guides, Command or Control, colon, semicolon, and with my rectangular tool, I'm going to draw just kind of half of a cap here. And I can always play with the size later. And I'm going to draw a rough size of my body just to get an idea of what I want here. Okay, so I'm going to start with my cap. Now for my cap, I want a little bit of a curve here. So I'm going to use my direct selection tools to make sure I only have one of my anchor points selected. And then using my little rounded corner feature, I'm just going to curve and pull where I want. Then I'm going to go to my bottom one here and just I'm going to do a really, really slight curve at the bottom. So they're slightly different. Next, I'm going to focus on, I'm going to make this a little bit shorter of a cap. Yeah. Okay, next I'm going to change my color of my body. You can make this any color you want. I think for my sample I made like a light, almost like a gray. It can really be anything though. And actually for the video, let's make it a little bit darker so you can see for a moment, so you can see the lines. I want to start at the very bottom and I want to apply a slight curve. So again, I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, select one of the anchors and pull in a little bit. I just want a slight curve at the bottom of my glass or bottle. And then here, I actually want to do kind of like a little bit of an S curve right here. So I'm going to go to my pen tool. Actually, I'm going to go to my add anchor point tool. And I'm going to click and pull here and click about here. Then with my delete anchor point tool, I'm going to now grab my anchor point tool and convert my points from hard angles to curves. First one I'm going to start with is at the top, and then I'm going to go to the second one and pull down. kind of get a little bit of my curve that I want. Now this one here I want to be a little bit tighter, so I'm going to use my direct selection tool and I'm going to move this down a bit and over. That looks pretty good. You can have more or less of any of this, depending on what kind of shape you want your bottle to be. If you want it to be a little less, you can pull it down. That actually looks better. Alright, so again, we're only looking at half of the bottle. Now for me, I don't need this inner part, so I'm going to select both of these, and then using my shape builder tool, I'm going to add this shape to my yellow, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag across, so cut that form away. Then next thing I want to do is I want to bring my yellow forward, so I'm going to right click with my yellow cap selected and choose Arrange Bring to Front. So now my yellow is above my gray. So now I have my basic form of my bottle. And we can check this revolving part here by selecting it and then going to Effect 3D Revolve. Now, I'm actually going to show you something that's important, and this is an important step before you go to that 3D and Revolve. You want to group these, and I'll show you why by duplicating this here. And I hit Alt. I'm going to duplicate this over here. So I'm going to have two standing next to each other. This one here I'm going to group. This one here I'm not. Okay? Now when I choose the one where I have not grouped it and I go to Effect 3D Revolve, and I'm going to go down here to hit Preview, the first thing I want you to pay attention to is what side we're revolving it around. Now obviously this does not look like a bottle, right? And that's because this is revolving around my left-hand side. What I want to do is go to Revolve and make sure it's on the right side, because that's the smooth edge that we are revolving around. So we have our bottle. Now because this is not grouped, this is when you start to see these situations. My cap and my bottle are no longer attached, and the more I try to rotate in the different forms, you can show they're obviously individually being considered rather than a unit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose OK for this. Now for this one here, my grouped one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to Effect, 3D, Revolve, and I'm going to choose Preview so you can see my preview. And again, it's doing the exact same situation where it's revolving around my left-hand side, but I want it to revolve around my right-hand side. So I'm going to go to my revolve area and choose right edge. This time, as I move it around, you can see my cap and my body are clearly staying together as a unit. This is a very important part if you want your object to look like it's part of each other. So depending on what it is that you're creating, make sure you group your object before you create your complete form. Now, going back to this basic options panel, the position here, you have basic ones you can choose from, like if I want a front position, or if I want to have maybe a left position. How about off-axis left or right or back? You can find what works for you. It's giving the effect that you want. Once you have the placement that you like and you have your it revolved correctly, the next thing you want to pay attention to is your surface. There's different types of ways you can look at this, and depending on what you need. For the actual kind of color and shading, I go to the plastic shading. Now this is where you can change and move your highlight around, or move it completely into the back. You can also have more than one light source. You can add a new light source by having two light sources, and then you can move them individually depending on what it is that you need. You can also delete that light source if you don't like it. And then you can adjust everything. So right now you're seeing the light intensity. You can increase the lighting. You can decrease. You can your highlight size, make it smaller or larger, or increase your intensity. And you can increase your blending steps. You can also change the shading color that you want. For example, let's say you don't want black and you actually want it to take on a hue of something. You can customize that by adding your blending color to be whatever it is that you want. Maybe you want your shades to be a form of gray or have a color hue to it. Like a purplish hue. These are all possibilities. I'm just going to go back to black for a second. Now right now, it's kind of like a dark gray. It's not really showing a lot of details, such. We can also go back and change the color. In the meantime, I'm going to choose OK, because I'm happy with the settings so far. And I want to make some adjustments to my actual bottle. You don't want to do this with the 3D feature on. So what you want to do is turn the toggle off for your eye, go and make any necessary changes with the color or the form. And I'm going to start by my gray. Instead, I'm going to choose a much obvious lighter color, so that way you can really see the form here. For a moment, let's just choose a light blue for a sec. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to my appearance here where I select my object with my selection tool, and I'm going to turn back my 3D revolve back on. Now I can go back, double click on my options here, and choose to go back to my preview surface and again adjust the lighting that works best for me. Okay, not perfect yet, but you can definitely see some highlights and some shadows appearing. Alright, so now we have our color adjusted. Now let's talk about adjusting the form. So selecting the object, again, I'm going to go back to my actual form here and not looking at it in the 3D option, but looking at it just simply, let's look at it in our stroked form. Now let's say we want a little divot right here. Let's grab our rectangular tool here and with the blue, let's make a little rectangle right. Let's make a small one. How about here? And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select both objects, and using my shape builder tool, I'm going to remove my form by holding down Alt. So I cut them away. So I just want to select those corners only, and I'm going to grab my direct selection tool and kind of make a curve here. Now that I have this curve created, you can see this little divot. If I do go back to my 3D revolve by selecting my form with my selection tool and turn it back on, you'll see the form being knocked out. So you can edit your bottle, you can create different things and make the design you want to have all these custom little elements. One other thing you can do is, if I turn this off, I can go back and maybe add a color feature here. So I'm going to select off my object here. I'm going to go back to selecting this color with my direct selection tool. And then grabbing my rectangular tool, I'm going to draw a little solid yellow rectangle right here on top. Alright, so now that I have that created, selecting my object with my selection tool, I'm going to go back to creating this as a grouped object. And I'm going to go to my effect, 3D revolve, and preview. Now you can see by switching my revolve back to my right edge, you can see the yellow band has also been added all the way around because it's only showing you the outer edge of the form. Alright, so now that the bottle is created, let's talk about how we can add that label we made earlier and place it on our form. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we go back to the appearance panel, and that's where we've been working with our 3D features and options, and select the actual bottle, okay, and then click on the 3D revolve. You'll see your options reappear, and one thing we haven't gone over is this feature down below here called map art. And by clicking the map art, you can see the surfaces of the bottle broken down, and there's 45 here. So we're going to skim through here until we find the major form, and this one is number 4 right in the front, and we're going to apply the image that you want to add. So anything you make within the symbol can be applied. So we created the label earlier and applied it as a symbol, so now we have the symbol to add. And right now it's very, very large, so we obviously wanted to scale that down. So I'm going to grab a corner here, and I'm going to hold down Shift for proportion and pull it down here. Make this significantly smaller here. Now you can see the white area here where it's sitting in the front. You can move it around. Okay, if you want it to kind of be like off to the side, you can see how it wraps. Actually make it a little bit smaller here. That's a pretty large form. Alright, so I went ahead and placed it on and chose OK. So now my label is added. I'm going to choose OK here. And I'm going to click off and zoom out a little bit to kind of show. So we have our form, we have our label put on, we can play color. There's some other features I want to show you. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this spare one here. Regarding the bottle. So one of the things here there's some other things I want to show you in regards to the bottle. Going back to our original form here, I'm going to turn off our revolve here. Okay. I'm going to turn off the revolve here, go back to our original form. And I'm going to change the color of this bottom form. This time I'm going to try a very, very light color. Let's even go lighter. And this time I'm going to do 1 point, and I'm going to change the opacity to 10%. But the cap I'm going to leave 100%. Now with both objects selected to make the bottle, I'm going to go back to my object and I'm going to make sure this one is grouped as opposed to earlier how it was ungrouped. Now I'm going to apply my 3D effects by going to Effect 3D Revolve. Remembering the same situation, how we need to apply this to the right edge because of how we drew it. you can see that now you can see the contents all the way around and how the actual outline or the stroke creates the form, but yet the cap still looks solid. And you can actually look from the bottom and see through. And you can see how the center portion of the bottle where the side repeats, that right there is why that's there. If we remove that, it would revolve without having that part repeated. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. And then on this side here, I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to cut the form. And I'm going to use my direct selection tool. I'm going to delete. Then I'm going to use my delete anchor point tool and click and click. So now I only have the outer frame created, not the full thing. I'm going to go to Effect, 3V Revolve, and I'm going to hit Preview. And then I'm going to go back to my right edge, and now there's nothing in the inside that's causing that to be thickened. So now I can actually go here, I can go back to my 3D Revolve options, show you that same bottom axis with my preview on, and you will no longer see that hole in the inside. Okay, so now we have the bottle. What if we wanted to take this a little bit further and maybe add some lemonade inside the actual bottle, maybe to simulate liquid? So how you would do this is you would select the content, and you want to make sure to turn off your 3D mode. We got to go back to just the lines. Now for this, I would actually select the bottom portion of this and copy and paste. But don't just copy paste in front. That's Command F. And that's so it's exactly placed in front of the line. Now, lemonade, we just got to change the color. Let's pick out our lemon color. And I'm going to suggest, not 10%. Let's change the opacity to something like 30%. So it has just a little bit more power in the inside. And then we want to, add our lemonade across the whole form here. So I'm going to find our intersect here. And now we have our lemonade. With this form, let's make sure that it's still grouped, which is good. And let's go ahead and check out the revolved feature here and see how it looks. Okay, so we have our lemonade in our bottle. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, making sure that we still have somewhat of an edge. And looks pretty good. Now again, this is not realistic, right? It's just a great way to kind of simulate, and you can play with different levels. We can move this around and try different things, and we can still add our label to push this further. Unlike before, you actually don't want to put the mapped symbol directly on this because it will be translucent as well. So what you want to do is actually copy and paste this form, and it can be just one of them. You don't need to do all of them. You can go back to the form itself. Let's do this. I'm going to turn off my revolve. So I'm going to just select this form here, and I'm going to copy and paste. So I just have one form here. Okay, so they have the same features. All right, so now that I have my form created, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to turn off my 3D Revolve, and I'm going to get my opacity back up to 100%. Then I can turn back on my 3D Revolve, and by clicking on my 3D Revolve, I want to have the same position. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to my off-axis front and choose Preview. Then I'm going to go to my Map Art feature. All right, now it's in the correct place. So now we have it on the right surface, which is number 7, and I create my form. And I'm going to make it just a tad bit smaller here. Okay. This is what I look for. I'm going to make the actual bottle invisible. So I have my label wrapped individually, choose OK, and then I can just place it, choose OK, and I can move it and place it where it was on my form. Another option you can do besides creating a label is applying just simply text to a bottle. The warp tool features with text. Now for the type tool, I'm just gonna, I guess I'll just type lemonade. And I'm going to make this text, let's do white. And make it a little bit larger here. And just to make this a little easier, I like to kind of consider where I'm going to curve it with to get the right percentage. So I'm going to go up here to the top where it's, again, look or warp options, and we're going to select this here, and go down to arch, and then you want to choose the bend, and this one here has about -15%, which actually works. And you can type in however much, or you can use your arrow key when you have it, the percentage selected, and you can move through the percentage to find out that amount that works best for you. Once you're happy with that, go ahead and choose OK, and then you can go ahead and move it around on the bottle and still scale in size, whatever you need. You can go back by selecting your envelope or looking at the envelope warp options up here, and you can reduce the bend amount or increase. So this one here, I'm going to go try -12, and you can see it's a little bit less. Alright, so now that you've seen how you can add text and type, now you can also not have white. I could have had no white texture in here. You can go ahead and make a shape behind this if you want to fill that in, if you see any visual consistencies and things like that. You can also add a drop shadow to the form and create a background environment. So I encourage you guys to have some fun, make a bottle, make a label, and create one of your own.